This is a test of the City of Palatka audio system.
Go ahead and start our 508. City of Palatka CRA meeting for April 11th, 2022. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. We will have our Pledge of Allegiance and invocation by Chaplain Mulberry. Everyone, please stand with me. Pastor Mulberry.
I'm here.
We're going to go ahead and have our pledge followed by our invocation. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, again, we thank you, Lord, for your goodness. We thank you for your grace and mercy. Thank you for how good you've been towards us. Father, we thank you because you spared our lives. You brought us together again for such a time as this. I pray, God, as we come together to do the business of the city, we pray for the wisdom of God to be upon the heads of your people. Bless every participant, God. Teach us civility all the way. We'll give you glory and give you praise for all that you do and all that you've done. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank God. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner McCaskill has an excused absence. Commissioner Will Jones, not present for the record. Commissioner Justin Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Rufus Borum.
Present.
Commissioner Jeff Rawls.
Present.
Mayor Terrell Hill.
Here.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from February 14th?
Motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. We now open the floor for public comment. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Is there anyone here for public comment at this time? If you are, please fill out a yellow speaker's card to my left in the back of the room so that we will have your name and address for the record. Comment? Seeing no one. Public comment at this time. We're moving to our regular scheduled business, tax increment fund, financial report, and budget update.
Thank you, Mayor. The budget and brief that you have before you is 58% of the year so far. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, Sonny. As you can see, we have collected the revenues year to date that we planned on for downtown, south, and north. And then the TIP reserves, I added the original budget and then also the year-to-date balance. The year-to-date balance does reflect us moving the funding for the building improvement grants into each respective area. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the agency as it relates to the budget presented?
I think just one real quick, and I think the answer is me, but there is no commingling of TIF to TIF if someone, okay.
Correct.
No, nobody could come in and say, I need a grant and it'd be awarded of a different.
Of a different district?
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
Second.
This motion to accept report is presented. There's a second on the floor by Commissioner Campbell. Any further discussion?
So we're just approving as presented?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, is number 2, discussion direction, building improvement grant cost share program and addendum.
Yes.
Okay, Mandy, have you got that?
Yes, I believe I do. So far, so good. So in creating the addendum for the advertisement of the building improvement grant, there were a few questions that came in that we need clarification from the board for. One was, does the CRA wish to make multiple awards to one applicant on multiple separate parcels, or multiple units on the same parcel, and or multiple buildings on the same parcel? So for example, the property appraiser would have 2 different buildings as 2 different improvements. Or we would have like the apartment buildings on Laurel, where there's 3 buildings, but 8 units, but they're all on the same parcel. Or one property owner that simply owns separate individual buildings and applies for the grant.
Mandy, if you need to tend to Michael, we can handle it.
Yeah, y'all might want to take this one. He's in a mood.
Okay. So board members, so there's 3 items that we're asking you to weigh in on. And I'll repeat the first one that Ms. Tucker was just talking about. There was a question if the CRA would entertain multiple awards to one applicant or to one parcel. Just speaking in terms so everybody can kind of visualize the different, possibilities here. There are multiple properties downtown where there are multiple buildings on a parcel and or multiple 911 addresses for multiple improvements as the property appraiser sees it. In the past, when we had the building improvement grant program, they did allow multiple applications, but it was taken under consideration when recommendations for award were made from the review committee to the CRA board. So just some historical perspective there. The second item was we did have a 10-year funding restriction in the program document, but we did not specify when that clock would start. So we're just suggesting that maybe we do it from the date of award. So there's some clarity there. And the third item was there was a request to consider land clearing as an eligible expense. We're proposing that land clearing is not an eligible expense and that we add the terms construction and demolition to the list of eligible expenses for clarity.
Okay, you've heard the recommendations from staff as it relates to the amendments to the program. Let's talk first about the multiple awards. Any comments or concerns as it relates to multiple awards?
I think it's really should be taken on a case-by-case basis. If you look at one that pops in my mind is Johnny Lyons has the old Steamboat Willie's in the bar downtown, but they have the shop next door. Or go toward the river. The first 2 storefronts are under one roof, and then the next 2 storefronts are under one roof, and then you get the old McCrory building. So I think if you do it by address, you're allowing them to double dip. I think we should take a look at holistically as a building, because your building is what's going to pay the taxes, not each address, correct? Or are we?
So you have the property value that's taxed and you have the improvement value that's taxed. Another consideration would be, say, an apartment complex in the South TIF district. There are 3 distinct buildings with multiple units in it.
But if you have 3 distinct tax bills, then I wouldn't have any issue with that. I think that if somebody has one taxable event on one piece of property and they're able to double dip, that would not be equitable. That's just my opinion.
So you're essentially suggesting that we work with eligibility of property based upon tax parcel.
Correct. That's how the money's generated.
I just want to make sure I understood.
Right, in addition to the number of applicants, and I think that would be the case-by-case basis, right? Where if an applicant put in for multiple grants for building improvements, then we just need to look at if there are other people who are also in the pool, to be able to pull from those grants. I know there might be a scoring system. Even if they score higher on both, we would need to take those things in consideration, I think.
How would you be able to do that? Because I guess the question that was posed to me was, what if you got an applicant who applies for multiple grants and owns multiple properties? And the two properties are the two worst properties in the community. Do we not do those projects if they score the highest because it's the same owner? Or do you go from there? And it was something that I hadn't really thought about, because my initial opinion was, it's a one bite at apple per owner. But then when you think about it, you may end up with people who've got multiple properties. So the question becomes, do we look at this from the standpoint of the property? We look at it from the property, we look at it from the owner, because that's really what it boils down to.
I agree.
And funding that's available as well, I mean,
I think,
case by case.
yeah, it's gonna be case by case, because if you have someone that pays $5,000 in taxes on one parcel, and someone that pays $10,000 on two parcels, they should get equal consideration.
And then we change the process too, as it relates to when they are able to apply for those grants. Isn't it like a 6 month, isn't it a 6 month cycle now, or?
Twice a year.
Twice a year,
You take the
right.
app twice a year.
So it's a
Every
6 month
6 months.
cycle.
But there's nothing that precludes them from applying for multiple properties in one. The way we've got it set up now, there hasn't been enough clarity as to whether they can apply for multiple awards in the same cycle.
Right. Well, if it's a case by case and we score it, if funding is there, if nobody else is in the pool and they score higher, I mean, that's something that we'll just need
Mr. Griffin?
to sort out.
But you would have to take into account the fact that right now, it's the applicants must not have received TIF funding within the past 10 years. So you'd have to change that if you
Right.
go forward with the concept of basing it on parcel numbers or tax parcels instead of individuals, then you would need to
So it'll be 10 years per parcel.
parcel.
Right.
Per parcel.
Yep.
Yeah, so we can provide some clarity there, because as it reads in the program document, it says for a project to be eligible, it must have not received tax increment funding in the past 10 years. So it's not the applicant, it's the project specifically as it is currently written.
Okay.
Or the
Parcel,
property.
parcel, okay, because it can change.
Well, the question is, and so Commissioner Jones, just kind of catch you up, let the record reflect Commissioner Jones is here. The question was, one of the recommendations from staff was for us to make a determination as to whether the program would fund multiple awards for any applicant if they had more than one property or more than one property address.
Going back to what Mr. Griffith just said, it might be necessary to change project to parcel, because theoretically, you've got one parcel, regardless of ownership, you could have someone making a request every 2 years for additional funding for that one parcel. It could be a different project, quote,
Right.
but you still got the same property coming back for more funding for the same property, same parcel over and over again. So it really would, along the lines of the way the way the commission is discussing this, might be better to go ahead and make that, instead of project, make it parcel.
I guess I would pose a question real quick, Mayor, if you don't mind, because on that topic, there is the possibility that someone could split a parcel. So a parcel or a building on a parcel, if there's multiple buildings, building A could have received improvement, and the owner could split and sell a portion of the parcel, and building B and C did not receive the improvement. You see that hypothetical scenario there? It'd be very rare. There's only a
But the
handful of properties.
non-hypothetical is building C and D are going to pay taxes.
But what comes,
So
right, so what comes to mind for me is the 100 block. And also something like Duck Realty, where you've got two different businesses in the same building.
And those used to be separate parcels,
Right.
and they're under a combined
Right.
parcel now.
So what's the pleasure of the commission agency at this time?
I think we should spell it out, that is based on parcel, not on the individual, and I think that covers it in multiple ways. It takes care of the 10-year rule, and it's going to be the most ugly way, and the individual itself would not be impacted if they had multiple parcels.
Because the individual can change it based on ownership of it, and if the parcel received the funding, then that parcel would not be eligible for the 10 years. So if you eliminate the owner piece of it.
And it meets one of the conditions is that it removes blight. That's one of the expectations. If there was blight involved, it would help with that. So I think that's just win-win for everybody.
Commissioner Jones.
So if an individual has 10 properties, they are eligible to get it 10 different times.
If they're paying on 10 different parcels. The idea is that each parcel is a standalone. So if you had one parcel and I had two parcels, I don't think it's equitable that I would only be allowed to apply for one when you can get 100% of your properties granted and I can't because we're both paying. I think that's the best way to look at it. It's my opinion. But.
No, I mean, what we'll have is a person who actually, if a person have 10 parcels, that's probably unlikely downtown or anywhere. However, if I have one and I'm applying, but I keep getting maybe rejected, but you got awarded 2 or 3 at a time and I still haven't got my one, that's gonna seem a little unfair. So I don't know if we wanna put a
I think
limit
that's
on
up to
that
us to
as
come up
well.
with a solution in the scoring and how we score the projects.
I know our scoring is if it's gonna make a difference in the, in that area and it's removing blight and stuff like that. However, again, the circumstances probably won't change on that person who didn't get the award the first time. So they continue to, or maybe an applicant is just savvy enough to make sure that they have those criteria in there to keep getting an award. I don't know. I just want to just bring that up because it could become an issue where a person feel that, hey, I haven't ever gotten an opportunity to get the money, but this person gets it all the time. And so it appeared that way. And I just want to make sure that we kind of like Jonathan said, how it may look. We may run across that. So if we're going to change things, make sure we think about that as well.
Well, it was one of the things we had with the HIP program before, which was one of the considerations. And I guess it does. I guess the reality of it is the way we've set the criteria. The impact to the community becomes the most critical piece, and it has the most points in place. And so when we look at our breakdown, and we talk about the redevelopment impact being 50% of what's in place. It gives an opportunity to really start to really fund projects that are going to have the greatest benefit for the community overall. And that's going to be something that we look at on a case-by-case basis. And so that in itself diminishes, I think, some of the risk for abuse. You're going to still have that in place. And I think over time, there may be some more bugs that need to be worked out. But I think the considerations that are before us today are definitely something that we need to look at.
I have a comment here. I think maybe, I know we're looking at the greatest benefit, and like Commissioner Jones was saying, that if we maybe looked at it in another way, to where if you got somebody who's gonna make a greater impact, if we split that in half, maybe say, well, you got other projects here that could contribute at another level, you just split them both the way, because the people at the lower end of the spectrum from a property ownership or funding standpoint may never compete with the guys who have unlimited dollars. So I'm thinking to be able to give other people an opportunity, maybe have it split a way you can calculate a split to where you can fund at 2 levels.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if you had $50,000 that you could dole out in a grant period, and you had $100,000 of the ask, then you could spread it out equally or spread it out in such a way that everybody gets a little bit.
Yeah, it can be, you know, in an equitable way where you kind of scale it.
You know, if you had two people asking for 25,000 and three people asking for 5,000 each, I think that might be more equitable.
Well, you already have built-in discretion on what the funding levels are. I mean, that's something that has to be determined by the agency overall. So you look at the totality of the circumstances. That's the most important thing. But you've got a criteria of how to score it, and it gives you 3 categories. So you can, I mean, from project quality to project feasibility, along with what the impacts are, you can score the project and you can justify the actions you take based on those 3 categories. So at this time, I entertain a motion as it relates to multiple projects.
I guess I make a motion that with line 1 on multiple awards that be based on parcel ID or parcels, not on individuals. On number 2, same thing, that the 10-year funding restriction be on the parcel, not on the individual. And number 3, follow the recommendation of staff to add the language for construction demolition.
Second.
It's a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
And for clarification, not allowing land clearing.
Oh, yeah, that was, I mean, that was okay, that was part of it.
Or number 3, yes.
And so the motion includes no land clearing as well.
Yes.
Is that friendly for the second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up is discussion and direction for direction on the business-specific wayfinding signage in the downtown corridor.
So board members, you may recall there was previous discussion regarding the business-specific directional wayfinding for downtown, and you directed staff to go get some quotes. We've done that. We've reached out to contractor that we've used for the existing wayfinding and pretty much figured out that if you wanted to move forward with something along the lines of kiosks, and I have Ms. Walsh here to speak to the wayfinding and her professional planning opinion on that in just a second. It'd be somewhere in the ballpark of $6,160, and it would require a budget amendment from another line. But I will turn it over to Ms. Walsh so she can speak to wayfinding.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I've had some experience with some wayfinding projects in another city. And one of the things that was found there is that business-specific signage can be problematic in that it changes constantly. You're always having to change the signs. Businesses come and go. As you well know, 50% of most businesses fail in the first year or so. The other consideration would be who your target audience is for these signs. Are they intended to be for someone passing by in a vehicle, or are they intended to be for pedestrians? Because that will determine the scale of the sign so that they can be read at some particular speed in the downtown area, which I'm pretty sure you don't want people speeding down through there anyway, but those are considerations that you should look at when you're making these decisions. That's basically all I have to offer. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do you have any visual examples of what you're talking about purchasing? Because I've stated before that I would not vote on anything else again about purchasing that we're supposed to get without seeing what we're getting. And I want to make this clear because you've given us estimates and I understand the cost factor, but I want to see what's going to be delivered before I vote on anything going forward. Let's make that statement.
So Commissioner, let me follow up with what Ms. Walsh said. When we started looking into what the cost was going to be, and to answer your first question, we can bring an actual proof back before they're ordered if you want to move forward. And that's the reason I want to bring up this second topic. we started looking at how many signs you would actually have to put out there and the potential for the number of placards based upon the number of potential businesses in the downtown district. That's not just St. John's Avenue. You would end up with a huge number of just additional directional signage, because as you know, you have to decide where you're trying to direct them from. And it's not just one turn, it's a series of at least 2 turns to get people from, say, State Road 17 to the business on Main, Oak, St. John's Avenue. Just imagine having anywhere of 20 or 30 placards at every intersection. When we realized that, we thought, we don't think that's the intent of the board, to increase additional sign pollution or to try and maintain something of that nature. So, sorry if you didn't mention it, but I don't know about you guys, but I pretty much use this every time I'm looking for something. So if you want to move forward with it, staff was suggesting we could go with a kiosk similar to the one in your packet from the city of St. Augustine, but we don't think it's necessary. That's the point. We think there's better things you could utilize the money for.
If I could, at one point, we talked about having it, something that had signs that were removable, that the businesses could pay for their sign to be put on. What I was expecting was something more in the pedestrian district. And I think that it's important for us to define the pedestrian district for that type of signage. Lisa's right. You're not going to get me to look at anything that has letters that are, smaller than this going 35 miles an hour, because you just can't read it. And if it doesn't jump off the page and get your attention, the businesses aren't going to benefit from it anyways. So I think it'd be beneficial if we slow this roll a little bit. What would it take to have a wayfinding app written for downtown Palatka that businesses could help contribute in, do some marketing? I know that at one point there was a group from QI Roberts Elementary that was or QI Roberts High School that was working on a wayfinding app for the bicycle trails. And you use the exact same app and technology for downtown Palatka.
I don't remember the program, Ms. Correa, what was it? Districts. It was a paid subscription program that the CRA set aside some funding to assist the business owners. But I just have to throw this out there. I use Google Maps around me, and it pretty much gives me everything I want to find. So I think the resources are already out there, and maybe it's more of kind of coaching and facilitating the businesses on how to work with Google to get your information on there to get a higher ranking, make sure it's accurate and it's not showing up 3 blocks to the south somewhere. I don't think we need to recreate the wheel here, was the point.
Well, but the difference when you go to WhatsApp, you look at something like that, there are wayfinding apps that are specific. And if we had a wayfinding app that was linked, I've said it before and I'll say it now, the Chamber of Commerce should take the lead in this. It's something that the county and the city already pay for. This should have already been created. We should have every business, especially in the central TIF and the north and south TIFs, should be included in that at no additional charge, because they're already paying for this service anyways. So, but I think from a fun perspective and people just walking around, it would be, you go to a place like Disney World, and I hate to even think about using that word lately, but they've got signs all over the place that people still use. They have their wayfinding app, and people still use the old signs, but they're very small. They're not really in any kind of eye pollution. I don't like signs myself. I'm adverse to signs. You go to Houston, Texas, and you'll see what signs look like. And then you're grateful to live in a place like Florida. But I think that there is an opportunity here to do a little bit of both. But I think that the businesses should have buy-in and also commentary on what it looks like. And maybe now's a good time to have the conversation on what downtown Palatka is going to look like from the pedestrian perspective, because there's all sorts of looks that you can go for, from ultra modern to ultra old to something in between.
One of the other things that we talked about was looking at the opportunity with the Visit Putnam app that already exists with the county, to see if there was a way to kind of put a link on there for us on that. And so that was one of the things that we talked about when we started talking about GPS and what the opportunities are that exist. So any questions or comments? So just so I can kind of let you know how it works, go ahead and come up and give your name and address. But typically what we do is when we do the different items, you'll fill out the yellow card in the back of the room.
Okay.
So you're fine.
I'm Bridget Heenan, 115 Southwind Circle, St. Augustine, Florida. I know that there's Instagram pages. It's called Stuff to Do. So stuff to do in St. Augustine, stuff to do in Jacksonville. And I'm a small business owner, and we personally pay advertisement to Stuff to Do, and they'll post about it. But this is something, you could easily do for free as you're building the community, and just post a cute picture of ice cream and say, oh, come here for ice cream. And I'm telling you, they have like 80,000 followers on their page. And that's whenever we do our art exhibits, people come in. I said, how do you hear about us? And they say, oh, Stuff to Do in Jacksonville. So that's just an example for you.
No, definitely. Welcome, and we appreciate that.
Yeah,
Can
thank
can I
you.
get you to take a look it up here?
Oh, yes. That's why I wanted to say something.
What app was this?
It's on Instagram.
Who uses
Yeah.
Instagram?
It's an Instagram page that you would make yourself.
We're not as old as you.
Maybe you could find some students, to want to do it. So, thank you.
No, we use it. It's over 50 crowd.
Thank you.
It's almost
Thank
like you
you.
really do need to have somebody in-house that can manage like what you talked about.
Oh, definitely.
I've been saying that.
I guess someone young and energetic. It could even be like an intern. Social media interns, believe it or not, that's a real thing. They really get hired for social media and stuff for the Jags and for the Gators. So.
Really?
Oh yeah.
But that's something for the chamber to be helping to drive those type things like that, because they do a lot of events. And so they know about all the events throughout the county and, in the region. So
Yeah, and it makes it fun. It's like these small businesses are following their dreams, and you're supporting these dreams.
absolutely, because it takes, when you're trying to get staff just to do that thing or marketing a different thing, we got agencies that help promote and market.
When
So
do you start?
she's pretty experienced, so.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those
Thank you
comments
so
were right
much.
on time.
Yeah.
Any other comments as it relates to this item? I'm always in favor of spending no money. So it's up to the agency as to what we do at this point.
Hold on.
I would think that it seems like the logical thing to do is to have staff come back with additional recommendations, see what other options exist for us to be able to use things that are already in the atmosphere to move forward. And so
How we can advertise.
A lot of people are using the QR codes lately.
Yes.
But again, I think, what is the look that we're going for? What is you shaking your head, yes, do we really have an identity yet? I think it starts with that. So circle back later when we have more answers.
So I think that the long and short of it is, we started a few years back using the lime green and blue as the colors, lime green, blue, and white as the colors to kind of make sure we identify what's going on in the city, particularly in the downtown areas. There was research prior to all of us coming here where the slogan, "It's Our Nature," was adopted based upon certain market surveys and things that were put in place. Although we may not necessarily be a fan of the slogan, it's something that was researched and it was something that was adopted, and we've tried to use it. You can even see the logo being used on your agenda today. And so all those different things are ways in which you identify. We definitely know that trails have become a critical piece of what we've got going on in nature and ecotourism has been a draw to the community as a whole. And so it seems to be the logical thing for us to do at this point is to let staff come back next meeting with some additional information and some additional options, and maybe even continually have conversations with millennials, for example, to be able to bring some stuff in. You're barely there still. And so kind of going from that standpoint. So I think overall that kind of puts us where we need to be, if that's the pleasure, because we've got to give direction through emotion at this time.
And I think in addition to what Mayor stated, and to go to, not Mayor, in addition to what Commissioner Jones stated with having a visual and being that you've had your fair share of working, is it possible that you could bring us some of the I guess, what you've seen previously in some of your other work or seen in different areas, so that we can at least have some kind of concept of options that we have. Thank you for the music. I like it.
Time was up. Anything else? Is that a motion?
Yes,
Can you restate it for us?
I can. I make a motion that we, what did I say?
Allow staff to research this and
That we
Bring
take,
back options for us with regards to the wayfinding, so that we'll have something to go off of moving forward.
date certain next meeting.
Yes.
There's a motion on the floor. It's a second.
I'll second that.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, SPDC. Mr. Paul. Been busy.
Mr. Chairman. When the SPDC finishes presenting, you mind if I've got another meeting I need to be to it? Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing fine. A couple of things to report this evening. First of all, I've been making quite a bit of progress on some consulting, which is great news. And I just want to re-mention something that most of you already know, but it's about me getting clients to the finish line. So the way I describe a finish line is a loan preparation package, because once the client gets to that stage, it's up to the client to follow up with the bank and go through all the rules and regulations and hoops that they got to jump through to get there. So I've got 2 clients that are at the finish line today and 1 more coming in tomorrow. So, but me getting them to the finish line is just really their starting line, because there's a lot of things you got to go through with a bank to get the loan. So just wanted to go over the 5 C's of credit here real fast. The first C of credit is called capacity. That's very important, because obviously you need to show where you're making money and can repay it before you get a loan. So that might stop some of the people that it's not a profitable enough business to get there. The second C is capital. So capital is how much equity do you have to put forth to get the loan? It's like going to buy a house. You need 20, 30% of the higher percent you put down toward the purchase price of that house, the more likely you are to get the loan for the house. Same thing holds true with business credit. So a traditional bank charges 20 to 30% equity toward that loan to be able to get to the loan. Now, the Small Business Administration requires about 10%. So you save quite a bit of money if you can get an SBA-backed loan. That's great, but there's a lot of more additional paperwork that the SBA requires for you to get that loan. There are quite a few more hoops that you have to go through. The third C is collateral. Collateral is basically when you buy a new car or a new house, you don't actually own it. The bank or the lender that gave you the money loans it because they have a lien on it. You don't own it until you satisfy the lien. So that's collateral. The banks want something, could be stocks, could be bonds, could be the piece of equipment, could be real estate, something to back up that loan. That's collateral. The fourth one are conditions. Those are economic conditions. They vary all over the place. Within one state, they can be totally different depending on where you live. State to state is totally different. And of course, you have worldwide economics also. So those are conditions. And then the last thing is character. And this is a major issue here. So they define character as being your educational background and business experience. That matters quite a bit, because if you don't have the experience to run a business, your chances of obtaining that loan aren't very good. Credit score is a big part of character. If you have a credit score that's 450, 550, 650, that's probably not going to be enough to secure a loan. They're probably looking at mid 700s. And every bank's a little bit different on that. But along with character go a couple other things. Do you own or do you owe for student loans? If you're in default to student loans, you're probably not going to get that loan. Do you owe the IRS money? If you do, if you've got a regular payment plan going, that's fine. But if you don't, you're probably not going to get the loan. criminal history is a big part of it, as well as judgments. So one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that their personal credit is one of the main things that drives this. And a lot of people don't realize just because you have an LLC, they're still going to make you sign for the loan personally. So you'll sign as an officer of the LLC and individually. So I can get people to the finish line. And I've got 3 clients that I'm working with right now. They're at the finish line, but that's really their beginning line to work with a banker to be able to, secure the loan. So lots of very interesting things going on as far as clients and trying to get them to the finish line. I just hope that they come, that the relationship that they build with the banker is sufficient enough to where they can get the capital that they need to conduct those businesses. A couple other quick things going on. The Putnam County Agricultural Summit. I don't know if you guys have seen it or not. It's a really neat thing put on by University of Florida IFAS Extension. That's coming up on May 13th. I'm on part of that committee along with St. John's River State College, Capital City Bank, Ag Pro, SBDC, Putnam County School District, Putnam County, and some few others. Originally, we were going to charge some money for people to attend. We've done away with that. So attendance will be free. It'll be at St. John's River State College, May 13th from 8 a.m. in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. And lots of good speakers coming in, talking about agribusiness, how to get involved with it. And we know that's a big part of the economy around here. So if you can, please attend. The workshops are going very good, and special thanks to Mayor Hill for his help in my last Zoom experience for the workshop. Turns out, I believe that we had 2 different Zoom meetings going on at the same
That's
time,
what it
which was news to me. But when you have one computer and you got Zoom on it, and then you open a presentation and they're running the presentation, you can't see the Zoom to allow people to come in. So to solve that issue, I have 2 computers now. One will be just for the presentation and the other one will be for the Zoom. So that problem hopefully has been taken care of, and I apologize to anybody in the that was trying to get in last time. We got you in, but it did take a while to get there.
It was good attendance though.
Yeah, very good attendance, and hopefully we'll have very good attendance tomorrow night. We have Human Resource Fundamentals by Megan Richardson, who's Vice President Consulting with Dynamic Corporate Solutions. Another outside expert coming in to talk about HR, things like questions that you can and cannot ask during interviews, where laws and changes, regulations in HR field, and making sure that you're staying in compliance. So these workshops are free. We just ask that you register. And then once you register, you can get the Zoom link and Zoom in or show up in person at the Chamber of Commerce tomorrow night at 5:30 to 6:30.
What's the title tomorrow night?
It's titled tomorrow night is called Human Resource Fundamentals.
Senior package in the back.
Human Resources 101, basically. So that's the next workshop is coming up tomorrow night. The one afterwards has been adjusted. It was going to be sales on May 10th. And the title of that one has been changed to How Does Your Business Compete for Customers? So that's one that I'm going to be teaching. And it's basically a competitive SWOT analysis, competitive strategies. Why should customers come and purchase from your business over your competitors? So a slight change in topics coming up during May 10th. Last thing I have to go over tonight is the next Entrepreneur Social. This one will be held at Atmosphere Boutique Day Spa. And that's going to be Tuesday, April 19th from 5:30 to 7. And as always, we have Marie Mishker from PTAC Procurement Technical Assistance Center. We'll be there to help out with anybody that has any sort of government procurement issues or questions. And just another quick note on all of this is that so far, all these entrepreneur socials, except for one, have taken place in the downtown along the St. John's Avenue. So the next 2 are planned for sit downtown on St. John's Avenue. So eventually we will go a little bit further into the field, but right now I'm trying to make sure that we're getting covered as well as we can for the downtown business district. Are there any questions?
Well, thank you for helping those small businesses get to that, I guess, near finish line, but your finish line and their new start. But I think, I don't know in terms of like looking at the criteria, which would be some prerequisites. I would think that they would need to be able to look at prior to applying, because it could be really a roadblock for them. Like you say, the criminal history, do you owe student loans? Do you owe IRS? The credit score. Some of those things will probably already be maybe put up front and say, hey, can you meet these criteria probably before we get started? Because otherwise, you're wasting your time up front. But so that's just a suggestion at least. They also got to think about the capacity, the capital, collateral conditions, and the character. But if they look at those things first, I think by you getting them to the finish line, you could save time by maybe looking at some of the prerequisites.
And when we do the initial consultation with them, we go over such items, but sometimes we don't get into the background of the individual client. One of those clients I just mentioned was arrested for a felony, but it was taken care of, everything's okay, but the banker still wants to look at it.
Right.
So all of these decisions boil down to the banker and how comfortable the banker is with the client and their history and their profitability and that sort of thing. So once again, I can get them to the finish line, but it's really up to the banker and the client to work things out, get all the information that they need to satisfy that this will be a good loan.
Any other questions, comments?
I do. So, when I was listening to this, what was going through my mind is we're being primed for a letdown. And then what's going through my mind is, what size loans are we talking about?
One of the clients is
50,000, less than $500,000?
Well, they vary in size from 2 million to 500,000 to 180,000.
Okay, and these are startup businesses?
And some are, some aren't.
Okay, so I think, part of what has to go along with that is most people aren't going to start up a business and go into a $2 million debt obligation.
That's an existing business.
Okay, I thought you said you had new businesses.
Yes, 2 out of the 3 are new businesses.
Okay, and they're going for $500,000?
One of them is, another one's 180.
Okay, so I think what would be helpful is for us to be able to identify lenders that have an appetite. I know that one-to-one financial credit union typically has an appetite for under $250,000, especially in the 0 to 50,000. They'll, just almost anybody will qualify for that. But
No, 100.
is it 100 now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it makes sense. So, having that, what lenders locally do we have? Who do we have that's a local SBA lender?
Well, Capital City Bank is one of them. I work
How
with
many
them.
SBA loans have they gotten out in the past year that you're aware of?
That I don't know.
That would be an interesting number to find out, because we really should be holding our banks accountable. They get CRA credits, not like we're the CRA, they're a different CRA. So we can put pressure on them, and that's how they make their money, but also they're able to borrow money at a very inexpensive rate. So I think part of this has to do with who's out there having contact with the bankers. Do you meet regularly with the bankers? And
Some of them, and all 3 of these clients have bankers. One of them already picked out, and the other 2 was one of my recommendations.
So that might be helpful, that you have in your stockpile bankers who are willing to take risks on startup business, because at the end of the day, we give our tax dollars to the federal government, they loan it to bank, that's a risk. God knows Putnam County's had a history where they've had two big banks fail, and it costs the taxpayers a lot of money. If those banks were still around, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because those banks were able to get money out. So I think that it's incumbent on us to be able to have the conversation, not just as and I'm speaking now as a county commissioner, and this is one of the things the county commission should be pushing. But you're in that seat, so you get to make the relationships And I know you got to do a lot of hand holding, but at the end of the day, all the Cs you mentioned don't matter if you can't get your foot in the door and get access to that capital. The BBIF is another
Yeah.
one that, you know, I don't know if they were going to have a presence down here at one point. I don't know
Yeah.
if they've come in. Are
They
you,
do from here to Central Florida,
what's her name?
Black Business Investment Fund.
No, the.
Colleen Shirley.
Yeah. Have you met with her, Ms. Shirley?
Yeah, I've actually introduced him. I introduced him to Ms. Shirley before. The other one that has an appetite now is TD Bank. So they're looking at doing up to 15% of annual of gross revenues on for unsecured lines of credit. And so they've got some new leadership in the region,
Mhm.
and they're looking to help small businesses
Yeah, in my experience.
up to 100,000.
Huh?
Up to 100,000 of
Yeah.
unsecured lines of credit.
The community can help carry small businesses into that part of it. You know, but it really does take the bank's understanding that the community through its representatives on the commission, that they have a vested interest in this. If left to own devices, banks are going to loan money on cars. They're going to loan money on houses, low hanging fruit. You know, it's sometimes it's difficult, but if we're going to prosper as a community, we're talking about a small downtown business district where you can have small businesses. They need to have access to that capital. I know personally, there's been times when I've been able to pick the phone up and have $100,000 unsecured line of credit, one piece of paper, 7 days. And that was back in 2011 when the economy was flat. But it's relationships, and it wasn't the relationships that I had. It was relationships that other people were able to bring forward on my behalf. So I appreciate what you're doing. I'm a small business advocate. I think, you know, the small businesses are what make America thrive. Big businesses, in my opinion, don't really matter if a small businesses are being successful. We don't need big businesses, but that's just me as a small business owner. So, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'm going to excuse myself and head to the Bostwick Community Association meeting.
Yeah, we would have been adjourned, but you had to come. So,
Who's buying dinner tonight? It's after 6.
thanks,
There are no more questions. Thank you very much.
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Any other comments from the agency?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, pardon me, everybody, for being tardy. So I missed the area that I wanted to comment on earlier, and that was the discussion and we actually approved it already. I just want to know what the status is on the Philip A. Randolph Transportation Hub and that project where we anonymously passed the direction to put back in that driveway at Price Martin. And I wanted to give direction to get additional estimates on that job to complete it. So is it appropriate to give an direction on that, because we were given an estimate, but we haven't, we could shop that out because we all thought that was too high for that project. That estimate given. If not, it's just hanging out there.
Mr. Chairman, if you're going to take action on that, you're going to need to bring it up as an
I
emergency
don't
item.
think, what I'm gonna do on that, so that we don't have to do it as an action item, if there's no objection from the agency, we can do it as by general consent for that to take place. And so, so just put a placeholder for the next meeting. A response back as it relates to the project.
Yeah. Because it's just hanging out there right now.
All right. We'll do that.
That's fine.
Is that Commissioner? Yeah, okay, very well, duly noted. Moving into our closing remarks, Commissioner, well, Mr. Holmes, do you have anything?
Does
Commissioner Board?
Sure as we can. Nothing.
Mr. Campbell?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Jones? No. Seeing nothing else at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.